I am excited to show you something new. I wanted to bring something to your attention. This is a guide, but it's also a filing aid, so you can file the edge of a card scraper and get an edge on it that you really want for your woodworking. And a lot of times the reason I want to do this and show you this is because people that I know through the years have contacted me and said they can get a card scraper to cut sometimes, but not all the times. And sometimes they go and they start to scrape and it just goes sliding across the surface without cutting. And I think often this is because, let me give you a quick drawing here. This is because they don't really understand what they're creating on the edge of their steel scraper is a very sophisticated edge. So normally the card scraper is like this. So we're looking at this on edge. We've got this square edge and they think that this is just a filed corner, but it's not. What happens is we consolidate the steel. First of all, we come in with something we call a burnisher, which is a piece of steel, hardened steel. We really push this along the surface of here until it consolidates and it creates that T-shape, but that's not enough. What we want to do is create something with a slight curve on the top, and this edge is rounded ever so slightly. That's an exaggeration, way more than I want, but it creates this hook. What we actually call it a hook, and this is the cutting edge, and that's the sophisticated part. But when we come with the burnisher in real life, we burnish this, we're burnishing it like this, and we go a little bit too far, and it's quite a brittle edge, and it often breaks on that edge, or worse, it turns all the way over, and there's no way it's going to cut. So I want to take that out of your life and give you a method that will work for now, and you can actually use it forever, or you can just use it as a temporary measure. So I've come up with this piece of equipment that will give you a card scraper holder as well, because once you've finished with it, I've got one here, once you've finished with it, you can put your card scraper into this and it will already keep the round in its position, in the rounded condition it needs to scrape, and you can use it as a holder, and that will save you burning your thumbs when you're using your card scraper. So here's what we're going to do. First thing, I've got a piece of wood. It's 1 inch wide, 7/8 thick and 8 inches long. The 8 inches is just 2 inches more than the length of my card scraper. Your card scraper may be 7 inches, so you'll make it 9 inches. It just needs to be longer than the card scraper by an amount. I've gone 2 inches because it makes it clear. From the end of my block of wood, I've come 1 inch. That's the thickness of the blade of a square, usually. The end of my bench is square to the long axis of my bench. And on the waist area at the bottom there, where we had that 1 inch, I'm going to cinch this and tighten it to my bench top. I want it parallel or aligned with the end of my bench. Lock it off. I've got it flush with this end here on my apron side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come 3.5 inches, that's half the 7 inches between the end of my piece of wood and that pencil line I put in, and I'm making a line across the midsection. Now I've got a piece of wood that's 1 meter long, and this just happened to work out with a decent radius. It could be any radius you want. If I take a pen, I eyeball the middle of this, that will be 1/2 inch to that center line. So I'm going to put my piece of wood onto that center line, and then at this end I'm going to come 3.5 inches from the edge of my bench. And what this will do, it'll create a point at which I can strike an arc with this meter long piece of wood. I need that. So if I've got that on that 1/2 inch mark, which I do, and then I just take any point, a piece of, I've got compasses here, I'm just placing that on that mark, that 3.5 inch mark. I'm going to butt my piece of wood against it in the middle, and I'm going to start just to run my arc, and that's given me an arc on my piece of wood that I can cut a kerf into. So there you have it. That's the shape we want. That's going to bend the piece of steel when it's in the holder, and that's going to help us to file the piece of steel, but it's also going to be a holder when we're done with this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make a square across the end line. Where did I put my pen? There it is. So I'm going to square this across the end because I'm going to put a saw kerf into here, going along that arc. Now this isn't any rocket science, so I'm going to come, I'll try it there. I might need to lower it in the vise. I've got this, I made this years ago. I made this to show people how to make their own. So if you've got one of these, this will work great. If not, you can use a coping saw, or you could, I'm going to go lower in the vise, I think. You could use a bandsaw. The bandsaw might put a fairly large kerf into this, and you don't need a large kerf. So I'm going to square across to that line first, and then I'm going to follow the arc as closely as I can, all the way around. So I'm flexing the blade. In whatever direction it needs to go to follow the arc. Keeping it on track. Need to come up. Follow it, follow it. And that's that. Now what I'm going to suggest you do, this actually closed up, so I can put my card scraper in here, push it along to a certain point, and then I can squeeze it closed and it will keep a nice tight curve on that piece of steel. I'm going to clamp this in the vise because I'm going to put a screw in here for later. Let's bring in a couple of, I'm going to use 2 drill bits here. And what these are, one is a reduction to take the threads of the screw. Let's see what happens here. I'm going to put the small bit in first. This takes the bulk of the thread of the screw, but it leaves enough bite in the thread to bite into the surface of the hole we drill. So I'm drilling in the center. Let me change my speed. All the way through both pieces. Like that. I'm going with the bigger bit, which will take the threads as well. But I only want to drill through this first piece. That's that. And now I'm going to go with a countersink, just so that the rim of the screw seats nicely in the hole, in the recess, and then I can drive my screw and it'll bite on the rim, on the inside wall of the hole, and that keeps it nice and secure. Let's back this out for now. Well, we can go back in later if we need to. Oops. Because I'm going to show you how to work with this now. So we've got the piece of the cabinet, the card scraper inset. We can set this flush with the piece of wood and it will probably still protrude just a little bit. If it doesn't, just take a hammer like this. So I'm just past the surface now. Now I can clamp this in the vise. If I go past the saw curve, so this is clamping the whole length of that 7 inches now, I can take a file, just a flat 10-inch file like this, and what I'm going to look for, I'm going to look for the handle down here, and I'm looking for parallelity along the length of the file. So I need to come up just a little bit. So I'm looking for that parallelity. This looks parallel. That means that this will be square to the long axis of my card scraper. So now watch what happens. This is called draw filing. We're going to push from one end of the card scraper to the other, keeping the file on track. Don't let it deviate. I'm going to show you. I need a piece of paper. See if this will work. Oh, this will work perfectly, I think. I've got a piece of card here. This is what I just took off. Now there's some powdery particles to this, but there are some long particles, and those are continuous shavings that came off the steel. So now I've got a square edge along the length of that scraper. Let me dust this off, because the next stage we're going to do something different again. We're going to take this burnisher. I've got my rag in a can oily. You can see one of my other videos on how to make one of these, but this is just a rag that's been rolled up and then it's been impregnated with oil, just regular machine oil. I'm going to put this on here and I'm going to go back and forth on this edge. And what this is doing, this is burnishing the edge. And what burnishing does is it sends the steel into itself. So this eliminates any kind of polishing you might have to do with abrasives. So I go back and forth, I'm sending the steel into itself. Do you remember how we were creating that T? So what I'm going to do next is take this out of the holder, and we're going to put this on the bench, and I'm going to take the file. I created a T that I didn't quite want yet, so I'm just going to take the file, place it on the surface, and push it into that edge. Now it's perfectly smooth. This one also has a slight burr to it. I push this into the edge just like this, and now I'm going to consolidate the side as well. So we do the same with the oil. I'm going to put my fingers here either side, and I just go back and forth as hard as I can. I'm pressing onto the surface like this, flip over, do it about 20 times, 20 to 30 times. So we're now sending the steel into itself on the sides. I'm going to put it back in the holder. This is so interesting. Like this. And this time, we're going to leave it above the surface by about 1/8 of an inch. You can eyeball this, take a look at it. Too much? Now that looks pretty good, but the distance is going to be the thickness of your blade of your combination square. You want it to be parallel, so I'm going to go a little bit more here. That looks great. I'm going to put it in the vise, and we're going to consolidate again. Now this might seem a little tedious, but it's really very fast. So I've got it cinched tight, there's no risk of movement. I pull the burnisher across the edge of the steel like this. I'm using both hands, but you can use both hands this way as well. Apply the pressure, keep it square, But now what I want you to do is to start tilting. So we're going from square across to tilting until we hit that outside corner of the holder. Now I've hit that and I've got a burr on this side. I can go from this side now and do the same, but I'm tilting the opposite way. But I'm going to turn it round in the vise because it's a lot more convenient for me to work that way. Okay, so here we go again. Consolidating square across the end and now tilting slightly with each stroke until I hit the wood on the other side. And what I've got is a burnished edge that has the T-shape. I do the same to this edge. I won't do it now because that's just a repeat performance. So we remove this now from the holder and we need a piece of wood. I've got some cocobolo here, which is a hardwood, dense grained. Let's see how we did. So I can feel for that cutting edge. And now watch what happens. I can use this two ways. I'm going to show you how to use it. Put the heel of your hand in there and bend it. Like that. Or you can come this way, put your thumbs on the back and push forward like this. So you see what's happening. We've got these beautiful crisp shavings, but that's not what we want. What we want is a glass-like finish here. Now if we put this back into the holder, we can use this as the holder. Instead of going all the way down, press it here. This is my cutting edge, so I can put my screw back in now, drive that screw like that. And if I lean this way, I just tilt it slightly. Look at this, same again. So I'm not bending this with my thumbs, I'm letting the burnisher in the holder stay bent and just pressing it to the surface, and I get these lovely shavings and a beautiful pristine surface. I don't think you can beat that.